Scott Flathouse here. I'm at the We Are Houston 5K, and this morning I left my beloved 70 to 200 at home, and I've got the Canon 100 to 500.
Last year for the Chevron Houston Marathon, I rented the Canon RF 600mm f4 lens. I'd always wanted to try out this monster of a lens, and you can see the video that I made recapping my experience with it here. Let's go back to this year.
So this is what I'm shooting with this morning, the R5 with the battery pack and the Canon 100 to 500.
This is the start of the We Are Houston 5K, which is held on the Saturday before the Houston Marathon. There's a saying amongst endurance athletes that you're never supposed to try something new on race day, and I guess that should probably apply to photographers as well. So even though I'm violating that principle, I do have a chance to try out this lens at this 5K race before the main event tomorrow at the Houston Marathon. Before we continue, let's take a closer look at the lens and compare it to the 70 to 200 that's my favorite lens for these kinds of events. This lens is much smaller than the 600mm lens I rented last year. I wanted to show it compared to my 70 to 200mm lens. They're really about the same size. Let's check their weight. First, we'll start out with the 100 to 500mm lens. It comes in with the lens hood at just under 1,700 grams. Next, the 70 to 200mm lens at just over 1,700 grams, so really about the same weight. Back here at the race, we're waiting for the lead runners to come through. We're close to the finish. Here comes one of the lead hand cyclists. Let me show you how I've got the camera set up for this shot.
I've got the lens all the way out to 500. The aperture at 500 is f7.1. I've set my ISO at 1600. On a bright day, this should be okay. Hopefully we'll keep the shutter speed above about 1/500th of a second or so. I'm aiming for that, that sunny spot down there as the runners come through there. Alright, we changed it up a little bit. I put it on shutter priority with a shutter speed of 1/800. Set the ISO to auto so it's going to float. Should keep the aperture around 7.1 or 8. Alright, here we go. We got the first runners and the wheelchair coming through.
After shooting several hundred frames with this lens, I felt like I was starting to get a feel for it. So I swung by the finish line and then started to head towards my car. One thing that I noticed was it was really hard to work the zoom. I was having to really crank it down. And I was thinking that there's got to be a way to loosen this up, and I wonder if there's some screws somewhere that I got to work on, because my 70 to 200, I've used it so much that it's worn. With just a little movement of my thumb, I can operate the zoom. This lens, I was finding I really gotta crank it, and then I turned it to the side, and it looks like Canon has an adjustment right here. So this, I can make it more smooth or tight. And so it has a little bit of a, I guess, like a friction fitting, and it makes it a whole lot easier to work the zoom. All right, well done, Canon. Still not as easy as my 70 to 200,
and there's a lot of play here, but it makes it nice because if you want to set it at a particular zoom and then kind of lock it in, it doesn't really lock, but it makes it harder to turn. You can set it on the tight setting. If you're moving it around a lot like I do during a race, then you can leave it on smooth.
So the next morning, which was Sunday morning, I got up early and went to the George R. Brown Convention Center where people were gathering for the marathon and the half marathon. This was the day that I was going to put the Canon RF 100 to 500 millimeter lens to the test. Am I going to like it well enough to replace my 70 to 200? Let's find out.
Okay, so I'm out here at the Chevron Houston Marathon course, waiting for the runners to come by. I thought I'd show you something about this Canon 100 to 500. It's got this external zoom, and you remember yesterday I talked about how it's got this ring that has smooth and tight. Well, when I tilt the camera down, when I have it on the smooth, the zoom seems to extend by itself just by gravity. And so I think that's one of the reasons that they have that ring. I'll show you that ring, the smooth and tight. I've got it on smooth just so I can work the zoom. The way I'm shooting it today is again on shutter speed priority, or TV, and I've got the shutter speed at 1/800th of a second. I've got the ISO on auto because this lens has a variable aperture as you zoom in and out. It looks like it wants to do f5 at ISO 800. And if I zoom it out, it's hard to do this with. So now, zoomed all the way out, I'm at f7.1, f8 at ISO 1600. So my ISO is going to float around a bit. I'm okay with that. I think as it brightens up, as the sun comes up, then should be okay. ISO will drop.
Let me share some final thoughts about this lens. Let's start with the positives. One of the standout features of this lens is its lightweight and compact design. Canon has managed to pack an extensive and versatile zoom range into a portable package. Optically, the image quality is superb, as you would expect from a Canon L lens. It's also got some very nice features like this window in the lens hood, which allows you to adjust a polarizing filter if you've got one on the lens. However, there are some drawbacks. One is the variable aperture across the zoom range. While it starts at a respectable f4.5, it narrows down to f7.1 at the 500mm end. This can limit your low light performance and depth of field control, especially when shooting at the telephoto range. Another area of concern is the zoom ring. Making quick adjustments is a bit of a challenge. In conclusion, I probably won't be trading in my 70-200 f2.8 lens, but I sure did enjoy using this one for the Chevron Houston Marathon. Thanks for watching, and leave a comment on what lens I should try out next.